you gorgeous individuals, it's Kav here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you all my top 18 favorite books of 2018. 2018 was a relatively decent reading year for me. I read 52 books that year, and that was on par with my reading the year before, though I had set a higher goal in 2018. Considering how the year had been for me and just my mental health state during the year, I think that I did pretty good. Along with that, I rated the majority of the books that I read in 2018 with 4 or 5 stars, continuing my trend of primarily reading books that I enjoy, and I really think that's due to the fact that I have started seeking out work by marginalized authors in the past 2 years. And you know what, without further ado, let's jump into my favorite books of 2018. Coming in at number 18 is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White. This is a novel that wasn't even on my radar this year, but I was offered an ARC and the premise sounded so interesting that I chose to do a review, and I can just say that I am so glad that I made that decision. The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein is an unapologetically feminist retelling of Frankenstein that sheds light on the wife of Dr. Victor Frankenstein, Elizabeth Frankenstein. I do want to warn you all that this novel deals very heavily with themes of abuse, particularly child abuse and spousal abuse and violence, so that's definitely something to be aware of before going into it. But if you can handle those themes, I highly recommend picking up this novel. The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein is the ultimate Halloween novel for you to save for Halloween this year. It is just a great badass tale featuring a strong, complex, and well-developed leading woman character, and it's honestly just a dark and gripping tale that keeps the reader on the edge of their seat till the end of the novel. If you, like me, have a liking for horror and feminism, I definitely recommend picking this one up. At number 17, I have Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. Homegoing was the first novel that I read this year, but I immediately knew that it would make my favorite reads of the year list. Homegoing is a multi-generational novel that starts with 2 separated half-sisters, Effia and Essie, and takes us over the course of their lineage. Homegoing is, again, a novel that deals heavily with intense themes such as racism, rape, slavery, and more, so I definitely want to prepare you for that before you go into it. But if you can handle those themes, this is one of very few novels that I truly believe every reader should read at some point during their life. Homegoing is one of the most powerful novels I've ever read and one of the most powerful novels that is in existence today. It really highlights the harsh reality of slavery and the mistreatment of Black people in America over the course of time. It is a novel that I made my mom read. It is a novel that I cried reading. It is not an easy and light read, but it is a necessary one. And even now, just thinking about it, I remember how floored I was the first time I read it. At number 16, I have The Serpent Secret by Sayantani Dasgupta. The Serpent Secret is a middle grade novel about Kiranmala, a 12-year-old who's just living her regular life in New Jersey before her parents are taken, and then she finds out she's a real-life Indian princess. Because I was lucky enough to receive an ARC of this novel, I do have a full spoiler-free review of it up on my channel that I will link either up there or down there for you to check out if you are interested. Honestly, I read this novel for one reason and one reason only: the Indian representation. But I am so glad that I chose to read it because it blew me away in so many ways. So I'm not going to minimize how revolutionary this novel is with how it's going to change the lives of brown kids everywhere, and how it probably already is changing the lives of brown kids everywhere with how unapologetically Dasgupta wove Bengali culture into this novel. But I also just want to acknowledge that it's a really great novel. From the world building to the captivating plot to the characters and the realistic depiction of a 12-year-old main character. I am not one who reads many middle grade novels, but I would gladly and will likely continue the series after how great the first book was. Next up, I have Arusha and the End of Time by Roshni Chokshi, another middle grade fantasy novel. This one is based off of Hindu mythology, and it follows the story of 12-year-old Arusha, who finds out she's a reincarnation of one of the 5 Pandava brothers and then essentially has to save the world. Not only do I have a spoiler-free review of this novel up, but I was also lucky enough to interview Roshni Chokshi herself at an event earlier this year, so I will link both of those videos somewhere either up there or down there for you to check out if you're interested. Arusha and the End of Time is the novel that would have saved my middle school self from a lot of heartache and identity struggle compatible with my identity as someone from Indian and Hindu heritage. And like The Serpent Secret, Arusha was the perfect first book in a series. Roshni Chokshi is just an unbelievably talented writer who has a way with words that just captivates the reader. And in this novel, she centers a strong female friendship with a badass and complex leading lady, using the influence of Hindu mythology, which just breeds a near-perfect novel. Coming in at number 14 is A Reaper at the Gates by Saba Tahir, which I don't have a copy of, so here is the second book in that series. A Reaper at the Gates is the third book in the Ember Quartet. The Ember Quartet is a fantasy series that begins with An Ember in the Ashes, and it is easily one of the best and one of my favorite fantasy series to date. Saba Tahir has created a captivating fantasy world that deals with real important themes such as racism and sexism and slavery and abuse and trauma and the experience of people of color and more, but these are also just really damn good fantasy books. These books are filled with intriguing plot points and way too many cliffhangers, and Saba Tahir just loves playing with our emotions, and I would gladly sell my soul for the final book in this quartet. Next up, I have a far too underrated novel to talk about, The Brightsiders by Jen Wilde. The Brightsiders is a novel that I discussed in my walk through my May arcs video, so definitely check that out if you want to get a glimpse into my reading life that month. But The Brightsiders is an unapologetically queer young adult contemporary that features a main character who is a teen drummer, Emmy King, and she is essentially branded as the media's latest train wreck. I do want to provide a trigger warning for the fact that there is both parental and relationship abuse in this novel, but both are challenged and combated. Jen Wilde is one of my favorite authors, and she has a knack for including casual diversity in her books, which is something that I believe all authors should be doing. And she also writes brilliant contemporary novels that deal with the unique theme of media and entertainment, and in this case, it's a band. And like I said, these media and entertainment things provide a unique aspect to her novels, while she also creates a complex narrative and an overarching story arc for the main character of the novel. She explores relationships such as the adorable swoon-worthy romance with the genderqueer love interest Alfie, and allows for important character growth and development. Wilde has beyond impressed me with her past two novels, Queens of Geek and The Brightsiders, and I highly recommend that everyone checks out her work because it is exquisite. At number 12, I have Blanca Aloha by Anna Marie McLemore, a queer Latina Snow White and Rose Red retelling. Blanca Aloha is a novel that I discuss in my walk through my October arcs video, so check that out for a more in-depth look at my thoughts on this novel. But for a brief overview, Anna Marie McLemore is doing the Lord's work. She is one of the most talented authors in the industry at the moment, and this trend continues with her latest piece of Magic, a fairy tale retelling that emphasizes sisterhood, celebrates queerness and brownness, and tackles colorism all at the same time. Told in 4 different points of view, Blanca Aloha allows the reader to look into the eyes of 4 completely different but equally complex and well-developed narrators. Each one of these narrators has their own story arc that doesn't take away from the larger plot line. Blanca Aloha is a novel that will captivate any reader, taking them to another world for a few hours, and I highly recommend that experience to everyone. Speaking of unbelievably talented authors, The Bells by Danielle Clayton is one of the best pieces of fiction I have ever read. The Bells is a young adult fantasy novel that takes place in the fictional world of Orleans, based off of New Orleans, Paris, and Japan, I believe, with conversations surrounding beauty and the dynamics between women as the main theme. In this world, people are born looking gray and dull, and a group of women called Bells have the ability to make people look beautiful. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to interview Danielle Clayton at an event back in February, so I will definitely link that somewhere on the screen or in the description for you all to check out. But I just have to comment on how much I admire Danielle Clayton for her work in the industry, and now after reading The Bells, for her talent as an author. Like Anna Marie McLemore, Danielle Clayton has a way with words that just captivates the reader, and she utilizes this beautiful flowery language that is so perfect for the world she's created and the themes she explores. The political intrigue involved in this fantasy novel is so intriguing and interesting, along with real-world themes of calling out the unrealistic societal expectations surrounding beauty and just exploring the dynamics between women and honestly just everything related to women. I legitimately cannot wait for the next book in this series, and I highly recommend this novel to anyone. But just a note that there is a vivid sexual assault scene in this novel that is definitely challenged and not condoned, but it does take place, so it's something to be aware of before picking it up. Next up, at number 10, I have Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. Leah on the Offbeat is the sequel to Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda, taking us back to Creekwood and allowing us to view Leah's senior year and also enjoy an angsty female-by-female romance. Becky Albertalli is another author who is brilliant at casual diversity, and that is again evident in this latest novel of hers, along with her talent for writing the best and most realistic teens there are. Leah on the Offbeat is the perfect combination of a coming-of-age story about one of my favorite fictional characters of all time, as well as an angsty opposites attract romance, with an emphasis on the supporting characters and the relationships with these supporting characters being written in a realistic fashion. I'm so thankful for the existence of authors like Becky Albertalli who write books that teens can really see themselves in, and I'm so glad that we got to visit Creekwood one last time. Coming in at number 9 is From Twinkle with Love by Cynthia Menon. From Twinkle with Love is another novel that I discussed in my walkthrough my May Arcs video, and Cynthia Menon is another author that I had the opportunity to interview, so I will link that video somewhere for you all to check out if you are interested. From Twinkle with Love is Cynthia Menon's sophomore novel, the story of a young Indian American teen filmmaker who tells her story through letters being written to her favorite female directors. The epistolary format of this novel allows for a unique take on this coming-of-age narrative of this young teen filmmaker, which in Cynthia fashion also includes a swoon-worthy romance between two Indian American teens. I loved everything about this novel. I loved the swoon-worthy slow burn romance. I loved the complicated and imperfect main character who made mistakes and learned from them. I loved the complexity of the familial dynamics and the discussion of money and poverty. I loved the exploration of friendships. I just loved everything about this novel. Unsurprisingly, Cynthia Menon wowed me with her second novel, and I have no doubt that she will with her third. At number 8, I have Tyler Johnson Was Here by J. Coles. Tyler Johnson Was Here is the story of a teen, Marvin Johnson, whose twin brother Tyler goes missing after a party and is later found dead as a victim of police brutality. I have talked about this novel time and again this year, and for good reason. This novel is bound to break you, but it will also heal you. This is an unapologetically Black novel, and I don't mean just in how it tackles racism and deals with police brutality, but I mean in how unapologetically rooted in Black culture it is. This novel explores relationships of all kinds. Familial, platonic, and romantic relationships are all given equal focus in this novel. This novel shows the harsh reality of the world that Black people in America are forced to live in. This novel made me cry time and again. Good thing I was in public while I was reading it. And it was goddamn painful to read this novel, but it was so necessary. And like Homegoing, it is one of a few novels that I truly believe every reader should read. Speaking of some of the most important books I've ever read, next up I have Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nguyen. Girls of Paper and Fire is a fantasy novel that takes place in the fictional world of Ikara, which is based off of Nguyen's youth spent in Malaysia and her identity as someone of mixed ethnicity. In this world, there are 3 different castes: Paper, which is all human; Steel, which is part human and part demon; and Moon, which is all demon. The reader follows the journey of Lei, a sapphic Asian leading woman character who gets chosen as a paper girl, which is just a fancy term for a concubine for the Demon King. This is another novel that I was lucky enough to receive an arc of, so I do have a full spoiler-free review that I will link somewhere for you to watch if you're interested, but I do want to provide a very big trigger warning for sexual assault and rape in this novel. However, trigger warnings are also included in the final copies of this book. So Girls of Paper and Fire is a novel that is dedicated to highlighting the power of queer women, of women of color, and of women as an entirety. It is a provocative novel that provides an honest depiction of rape and sexual assault and the brutality of the world we live in today. But it is also an inspirational novel that shows a young woman learning to battle the cruelties of the world and come out on the other side. It is a novel that includes the most epic slow burn romance between 2 sapphic Asian badass women characters. It is a novel that is inspiration for young girls everywhere, for young girls of color, for young queer girls, for the girls whose stories were never told. Nguyen has the bravery to tell them for us. At number 6, I have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is a historical fiction novel about Evelyn Hugo, a messy and complex bisexual Cuban-American actress who is recounting her life story to a reporter, Monique, so that Monique can write her biography after she dies. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is a novel that has been the talk of the book community for months now, and with good reason, as this novel is a downright masterpiece. This novel is not a light and breezy read. It definitely deals with some heavy and intense themes, and that's definitely something to be aware of before picking it up, but if you can handle those themes, I highly recommend picking this one up. Not only is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo told in a unique fashion that allows for Evelyn and Monique's story to intertwine in a really captivating manner, it also features a complex main character who is not a heroine. Evelyn Hugo is not a heroine. She's an icon of her time who made sacrifices and lied and manipulated to achieve her success in life. She is a woman filled with regret, and she is the epitome of a complex narrator who paints a realistic narrative of her life while acknowledging her wrongdoings but also not apologizing for who she is today. And now at number 5, I have a novel that is far too underrated and deserves far more support. Running with Lions by Julian Winters. Running with Lions is the first novel I've ever read that included trigger warnings inside, which is huge, and Julian Winters is also the sweetest person I've ever met, so I firmly believe that everyone should read his novel about the sports gaze. I read this novel in one sitting. I read this beautiful young adult contemporary debut in 3 hours because it was that good. Running with Lions is a celebration of brotherhood through the soccer team in this novel. It is the story of a bisexual narrator, Sebastian, who is a survivor of bullying and body shaming. It is an angsty hate-to-love romance between Sebastian and the love interest, Emir. Running with Lions is written in a form that I could never write in, third-person present tense, and Winters does that exquisitely. Running with Lions is a novel that highlights the importance of having something in your life that saves you the way soccer saved Sebastian. It shows the importance of having your own chosen family, and it shows the strength of overcoming bullying and body shaming and the struggles of struggling with your own body image. And it was just an added bonus that the angsty romance was to die for. This novel about the sports gaze really truly does deserve all the support and more, and I hope that 2019 brings it and the author the support they both deserve. At number 4, I have What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera, the dream collaboration that us gays have been not so patiently waiting for. What If It's Us is another novel that I discuss in my walk through my October arcs video, so just a reminder to check that out for some of my more in-depth thoughts on this novel. But essentially, What If It's Us is the story of 16-year-old Arthur Seuss, a Jewish gay teen with ADHD who is spending the summer in New York interning at his mom's law firm when he meets Ben Alejo, a 17-year-old Puerto Rican gay teen who meets Arthur at the post office where he goes to mail back his ex-boyfriend's stuff. What If It's Us is the ideal gay romance that ties together Silvera's talent for breaking our hearts and Albertalli's talent for making us laugh. It is a messy, romantic, hilarious, deep, purely teenage story about first loves and heartbreak and happiness and more. This is the story of an imperfect romance about two imperfect teens whose connection is so palpable. But in their focus on these two main characters, the authors don't forget the supporting characters. The family and friends are definitely there in this book, and they definitely provide their own additional quirks to the novel. What If It's Us is the ideal middle ground between Silvera and Albertalli's two extremes, which, I mean, I also love, so there is that, but this one tackles real-world issues while also being hopelessly romantic at the same time. Coming in at number 3 is The Miseducation of Cameron Post by Emily M. Danforth. The Miseducation of Cameron Post is an own voices coming-of-age story about our main character, Cameron Post, who basically spends the first half of this novel coming to terms with her identity as a lesbian and the second half of this novel in conversion therapy after she is outed. I would honestly campaign for this novel to be a classic. It reads like a classic, it is better than many classics, and it deserves to be one. The Miseducation of Cameron Post is the most raw and authentic lesbian representation I have ever read, and as a lesbian myself, that's pretty damn cool. The Miseducation of Cameron Post is a novel that means so much to me. The first half of this novel really really is a lesbian coming of age story that doesn't shy away from Cameron's exploration of female sexuality, while the second half highlights the cruelties queer people can be forced to undergo by showing the harsh realities of conversion therapy. Which of course I want to warn all readers that this book does deal heavily with themes of conversion therapy and homophobia, so definitely be aware of that before picking it up. Despite the fact that this novel takes place in the past, conversion therapy is something that still exists in our world today. Homophobia is something that still exists in our world today. These cruelties still exist in our world today. And Danforth shows all of that in such an honest light, as this is a novel that simultaneously dismantles and deconstructs this homophobia and this emotional abuse these characters are forced to endure, while also celebrating lesbianism and celebrating queerness. The Miseducation of Cameron Post is the lesbian rep, and it is my lesbian rep. At number 2, I have Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. Girl Made of Stars is another novel that I discussed in my Walk Through My May Arcs video, and it is a novel that is far too underrated for my liking because it is a masterpiece. Girl Made of Stars is a young adult contemporary novel about Mara, whose twin brother Owen is accused of raping one of her best friends, Hannah, and this forces Mara to reconsider what feminism means and consider whether she is going to believe Hannah, and it forces her to confront her own past with sexual assault. In a timely manner, she is also simultaneously struggling with her relationship with her best friend and ex-girlfriend Charlie, the sapphic genderqueer representation of my dreams. So I'm sure you've gathered that this novel deals very heavily with sexual assault and rape, so I'm definitely going to provide a trigger warning for the fact that it deals very heavily with that material. But if you can handle those themes, you need to read this novel. This novel is a timely masterpiece that is a heartbreak, showing the realities of what rape survivors and sexual assault survivors are forced to endure. This novel is a character-driven masterpiece featuring a power trio. Mara, a bi-survivor of sexual assault who's one of the best narrators I have ever read a story from. Hannah, a rape survivor who exemplifies strength. And Charlie, a sapphic genderqueer teen who is the rep that I have yearned for far too long. Girl Made of Stars is one of the most important and powerful novels out there, raising important questions and challenging society on our mistreatment of women and our mistreatment of rape survivors and sexual assault survivors. The fact of the matter is that Girl Made of Stars is one of the greatest novels that has ever been written. And coming in at number 1, shocking absolutely no one, I have Guinevere Darkness by Cassandra Clare, the conclusion to the Dark Artifices trilogy, which is set in the overarching Shadowhunter universe. I certainly have a review of this bad boy up, so definitely check that out if you're interested, and we can discuss all our spoilery thoughts over there. But basically, Guinevere and Darkness is an epic 900-page conclusion that is definitely Cassandra Clare's most sophisticated novel to date. In a shocking turn of events, I actually don't think this is my favorite novel of the Dark Artifices trilogy. I think that title still stays with Lord of Shadows. But Guinevere Darkness did a brilliant job of wrapping up the current storyline while also laying the ground for the Wicked Powers to take place. Because it is a last book in a very intertwined series, I obviously can't talk too much about it, so let's just leave it at I love this book and I can't wait to discover and read more about this world. So those are my favorite books of 2018. I am so happy that it is getting so hard for me to form these lists, because that just means that I am reading more and more books that I have enjoyed. And if I could have included 30 books on this list, I definitely would have. But the fact that all of these books made it to this list is just a testament to how incredible they all are. I also want to remind you all that for every single book I read, I write an in-depth Goodreads review. There are very in-depth reviews of all of these books up on my Goodreads, and those reviews took me like half an hour to an hour to write, so I could definitely use your support there and I would definitely appreciate it. So be sure to check out my Goodreads, which is linked in the description of every single one of my videos. And with that, I am just so happy with my reading year of 2018, and I know that 2019 is going to be even better. So I think it's time to conclude this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe, because that stuff makes me happy. And go ahead and comment down below and let me know what your favorite book or books of 2018 were, because I'd love to chat with you about that. And as usual, all of my social media and my Goodreads will be in the description below if you'd like to follow me anywhere else. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day night wherever you are. Please remember that you are beautiful and you deserve the world, and I will see you soon for a brand new video. Goodbye!